Chris Howell Foundation, and today is National Youth HIV AIDS Awareness Day, April 10th, and I have a special guest here with me. Thank you so much, Jessica Glaspie, for joining me today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you're an advocate and you're also an author for HIV and AIDS awareness. So tell me why you decided to tell your story about living with HIV.
The number one reason that I started to tell my story is because I tested positive at a very young age. I was only 22, and I had a very hard time, and still today, finding people that could relate to me as far as being cisgender, heterosexual, black woman, young. It was very hard.
Okay.
So I struggled through my 20s, and at 22, you're quote unquote grown at 18, right? So 21, I was living in Atlanta. It was like
Turning up.
Yeah, exactly. And then boom, 22, I had HIV. So yeah, my life changed.
Let's start from the beginning. So How long have you been living with HIV? Because you said you got it when you were 22.
Correct. So it'll be 13 years in December.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. At the age of 22, you're very young, you're healthy. So what made you decide that, hey, I need to get an HIV test? Or how did you find out that you were HIV positive?
So back in my 20s, I was a little firecracker.
Okay.
And I got into a physical altercation with a roommate that I had at the time. So we just couldn't get along. And so we ended up fighting, and like my lymph nodes had swelled, and your lymph nodes, they go like down the side of your neck, under your arm, and like in your groin area. So I had a lymph node that was protruding, and I was like, it was tender to the touch, like, really sore, and I was just sure it was from the fight.
Okay.
So I went and saw my primary care, and he was like surprised because I could see the one that was swollen, but they were all swollen.
Oh.
But it wasn't something that I could see if I'm, not being clinical, not being a doctor. So he told me to come back. He gave me some kind of prescription or something to get the swelling to go down. And I ended up going back. I ended up seeing him like 3 times before he referred me to an ENT because he couldn't figure out why all my lymph nodes were swollen. And then when I went to the ENT, he tested me for HIV and lymphoma, which was cancer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then he kind of sent me on my way, like the results will be back. I was going to schedule you for a biopsy, which was a small incision underneath my chin so that they could send the tissue off for testing. And so when I went in the hospital for my biopsy, my blood test had come back already, and it was positive for HIV.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So when they gave you that news, how did you feel?
I was devastated. I was so much devastated that I didn't even say anything. I was just sitting there. And I'm sure he had broke this news to, however many thousands of people. But I was just in shock. I didn't even really know what HIV was and how that was going to affect me, how it affected my body. And then I was in Atlanta kind of by myself. My godparents lived there. I just kind of moved there on a whim. I was leaving a relationship. And so I just needed a change of pace, change of scenery, And so my godparents were at the hospital with me because I couldn't drive after the surgery.
Okay.
So they were there, and the doctor came in, and he sat down on the bed next to me, and he said that he had some news, to tell me. So I asked my godparents to leave the room.
Oh.
Because I didn't know if he was going to tell me I had cancer, if he was going to tell me I had HIV, if he was going to tell me it was nothing, but I just wanted to absorb it by myself. So my godparents left the room, and he said, your test came back positive for HIV. And I just froze. I didn't say anything. I just nodded my head very slowly up and down, just kind of okay. And it was just kind of what now?
Shock.
So
wow.
My first instinct was to call the person that I was dating at the time to let him know what was transpiring, but I didn't. I ended up calling my mom first we're from Northern Illinois, the Chicagoland area, Zion, Illinois, to be exact. And my mom still lives up there. So I was in Atlanta kind of by myself, like I said. So I called her, and I'm like, I
You
just
told your
tested
mom.
positive.
How did she react to that news?
She said, "Are you sure?"
That's what I was going to ask. Were you in denial? Did you tell the doctor, like, hey, can you test me again? Like,
I didn't because I was just so in shock. I knew with all the testing that he had done.
you knew something was wrong.
Yes. Like, I knew it was something, you know. So, yeah, I told my mom. I had to tell my godparents because they were there. They were really supportive. Everybody's really supportive. But when I told my boyfriend at the time, and I said, you know, I want you to go get tested. And if you test negative, like, we don't have to continue on in this relationship, you know, because I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do, how I was going to figure my life out. And he was like, that's messed up. You know, he still wanted to be with me, you know, this and that. And so I'm thinking, like, okay, I got a real, like, ride or die, you know, whatever.
Okay.
So we continued in a relationship for a little while, but it just ended up being that he was born with HIV, and he was the one that gave it to me.
He was born with it? So
Yeah.
he knew.
Yeah, he knew from, like, the day he met me at the traffic light, which is another story for another day.
Girl, I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
He knew. So this is National Youth HIV AIDS Awareness Day.
Correct.
And so the fact that you just told me that he knew from the day he was born that he had this makes me ask the question about young women and men who are out here dating. How important is it to ask your partner before you get intimate for an STD test? Like, let's go get tested before we take this next step, because maybe if you would have done that, you would have been aware of his situation.
Exactly. It's very important to get tested and to know your status and the status of your partner. And I share that in my book. I share that when I speak all the time. I think we are too trusting a lot of times. And, you know, you get to know somebody and you date someone and you believe that their word is bond. But at the end of the day, if you didn't see it, you can't really say that that's what it is.
And what do you say to young people out there who are listening to this and listening to your story, who go to the club and go hang out and partake in drinking and smoking, and you're just kind of in the mood and it just kind of happened, and you're not thinking about being safe or responsible or going to get tested before you make this next move? You're in the moment. What advice do you have to give to those youth or teens that are out there right now?
Use protection. It's so important. And I understand getting caught up in the moment is the same thing that happened to me. I was in a monogamous relationship. So, you know, just got to know him, got to trust him, and believed that he had his test like he said he had, you know, and then, you know, that
Well, he
wasn't the
did have
case.
his test.
Yes.
And he
and
knew.
it was positive.
Right.
But that is not what he shared with me.
That is not what he shared. And you know,
So,
that's just crazy.
yeah.
That is just so crazy. I really hate that happened to you, but I am so happy that, you know, as a African American woman who is living with HIV, you're beautiful, you look healthy, you know, you're thriving. We're going to get to that, right? And you're an author, and so you just have so many amazing things happening for you right now that happened to you. But at least you telling your story, you're actually saving the lives of other young women and men out there. So I really appreciate you being here today, just telling us your story.
Thank
you. Yeah, no problem. So we're talking about, you know, you found out you got it, and like I said, we 13 years down the road.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to stay healthy?
Oh, therapy, psychotherapy is very important. I don't feel like I would have gotten as far as I've gotten in life without therapy. It wasn't pushed when I first tested positive. The importance of having a healthy mental state was not stressed for me.
Okay.
I wish it was, and if I could share that with the youth right now today, I think it's important to seek professional help if you feel like you need it, because it's a large pill to swallow.
Right.
I mean, I can't imagine being born with it, right? But I know what it was like to test positive at 22.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're born with it and you have to navigate through your whole entire life with HIV, you know, you're born in the 80s, late 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it wasn't what it is today,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So, you know, National Youth HIV and AIDS Awareness Day is something that we should take seriously. You know, we should really, really, really bring awareness on this day to our youth, because our youth are our future, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that we're preparing them for those kind of things, because I didn't think HIV would ever happen to me.
Right.
You know, so, and now I'm raising kids. I have 3 children.
Okay.
And none of them have HIV. So
Look at that.
Yeah.
See, that's the misconception that I'm talking about. And I want to talk more about the stigmas. So you found out at the age of 22 that you had HIV.
Correct.
But you have been living your life. Are you married?
No.
No, okay.
Divorced.
Okay, but you were married.
Yep.
So you got married and you have 3 beautiful children.
I do.
None of them have HIV. So if someone is newly diagnosed, they can look at you like, hey, you can continue to live your life and find someone, still have children, still have a family. Tell us more about that aspect of your life.
So ever since I tested positive, I've never been in a relationship with someone that had HIV.
Okay.
So I don't want anybody to think that you have to be with someone that has HIV because you have HIV. Like, there's plenty of great people out here that will accept you for exactly who you are without you having to water yourself down. You know, I dealt with domestic violence. I dealt with emotional abuse and verbal abuse and all those things because I felt like it wasn't ever going to get better for me, but it got so much better for me when I started to focus on myself. So I preach self-love and self-care in my book because it took me a while, right? It took me a while to get there.
Okay.
But once I was there, I was like, okay, this isn't about you anymore. This is about me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come on, girl.
So I graduated at 27. I had
Come
a
on.
4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Tell me them accolades.
Yes. I have my bachelor's in business management.
Okay.
I have a very good job in supply chain.
Hello. What else?
Yes.
What else?
I wrote a book.
There you go.
I'm a motivational speaker. I'm actually speaking on a panel discussion tomorrow at UTA.
Okay.
I did the Revolt TV interview.
Look at you.
Yeah. I did a feature for Essence magazine. I've done Women's Health magazine, the Chicago Tribune, which is our local newspaper back at home.
Tell me about that jacket you got on.
Oh, I am a finer woman of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Yep, I crossed spring of 22.
Congratulations.
So, yes, that was part of my dedication to service and things like that. So, I've always been an advocate. I've always wanted to give back. And I always say I was a force to be reckoned with, but I always wanted to be a part of something that was bigger than myself, which is why I decided to join a sorority. But you know, I'm 34. So at this point, I've been positive for 13 years and I've accomplished a lot.
Yes.
And I don't ever want people to think that they can't. You know, I tell my daughter all the time. My daughter just got Outstanding Citizen award. And all her teachers tell me she's so compassionate, you know, and she cares so much about other people. And I'm like, she gets that from her mom.
Yes, yes.
So,
that's
you
awesome.
know, HIV and AIDS, National Youth HIV and AIDS Awareness Day is also a time for me to celebrate my kids, you know, because they went through all of this with me. They go through all of this with me, you know. So it's important to acknowledge them too, because they're living, you know, they're living the life too.
So how were you able to have children and not pass on the virus? Is there some type of medications that are out there that help you not give the virus to someone else?
Correct. So they have PrEP. That works as a preventative for people that don't have HIV.
Okay.
There's also me taking my own medication. So there's U equals U. It's Undetectable equals untransmittable.
Okay.
So my medication keeps my viral load undetectable, which means it cannot be transmitted sexually.
I see. Okay. So I want to talk about some of the stigmas and misconceptions about people living with HIV/AIDS, because I have spoken with people who are not positive, and some of the things that they say, I have to tell them, like, that's not true. And I want to first say, okay, if you go to someone's house and we have a potluck and you use some of the dishes, the forks, the glassware or anything like that, can you transmit HIV?
No.
If you go to someone's bathroom and use the bathroom or the shower, can you get HIV?
No.
Okay.
No.
What other stigmas have I heard? If you kiss someone, can you give them HIV?
No.
Okay. What stigmas have you heard or experienced as a person living with HIV? How has someone treated you differently because they found out your status?
All of the things. I feel like sweat. I remember when I first started, so in undergrad, I was working part-time at Walmart. And I remember just like being so open. I've always been kind of so open about it because it was just like, this is just my life. It's, you know, it is what it is. But I remember an older coworker of mine thinking that she could get it from sweat. Because if you look it up, it'll say bodily fluids, right? But you still have to be educated enough to know that you cannot contract HIV from sweating on somebody. You know, you think back to Magic Johnson days when nobody wanted to play ball with him, you know, because of the stigma associated with HIV and AIDS. So that's another big reason why I started sharing my story is because I wanted to erase the stigma, you know. It's not a gay disease. That really grinds my gears. You know, people need to know it's always an assumption, you know, that the person that gave it to me was gay or slept with a man or, you know, all those things. And
or on the down low.
Like, it's like people just can't fathom that he was born that way. Right. You know what I mean? So I started telling my story because I felt like it was important, you know, to erase that.
So when people treat you differently, like you're working at Walmart, you're just trying to make a living. That's why you're there. And they do things like that. Is that why the mental health aspect is so important? Because have you ever just got upset and angry? Because you already said you were feisty back in the day, right? Have you ever just been so angry where you wanted to lash out at somebody or lash out at the fact that, you know, this happened to you? And how did you handle that?
Yes. And for a long time, I was channeling my anger towards my partner, my spouse at the time. I couldn't maintain a healthy relationship.
Okay.
I struggled with that because I was angry. I was an angry person. I needed to accept, you know, that this was my life and learn how to navigate, you know, how to thrive in today's society with HIV. So, yes, mental health, like I said, I wish that the mental health support was offered when I first tested positive. They were so focused on keeping me in care. Right. They were so focused on getting me on medication and things, which is also very important. Yeah. But if you're not in a healthy mental state, then you don't have a desire to take medication. You don't have a desire to leave the house. You don't have a desire to do all these things. You know, you slowly sink into like depression and, you know, things like that. So again, I was in a domestically violent relationship as well. Okay. So it was a lot. It was a lot. And I just dealt with it on my own. We really need to erase the stigma, right, in the Black community about seeking help, you know, because it used to be, and it's slowly going away, I feel like, but it used to be that you were crazy.
You need to go to the crazy house. If you need therapy, yes. Say it what it is.
Or like, oh, I was diagnosed with depression, and the first thing people say is, what are you depressed about? You know, and it's like, you know, people have to understand, you know, and be sensitive to the topic, right? Especially if you don't experience it on your own.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your book. It's called Life, Love, and HIV.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna give me that book that you let me pass it on over.
I am.
Pass it on over.
It's
Okay.
not signed yet, but I got
So she gonna give me this book for free. Okay, I'm getting hooked up. I appreciate it, and yes, she gonna sign my copy. But so if anybody wanted to purchase the book, tell us a little bit about it, because it's your memoir, and why you decided to write this book.
Okay. It is available on Amazon. Okay. So you can look Life, Love, and HIV, a memoir up by Jessica Glaspie. I decided to write the book because when I was telling my story on these platforms, Revolt TV and Essence and all those things, it was never a chance to tell my full story from beginning to end. You know, you only have so much time in an interview, but I really felt the need to share the whole story, how I met him, how things happened between us, the kind of relationship that we had, kind of what my life was like after I tested positive. So I decided to write a memoir. I started journaling in 2007.
Okay.
This was before I tested positive. I tested positive in 2009. So I could see, I used to write every day. So I could see how my life changed from 2007 to after I got HIV. So I wanted to write the book because I wanted to encourage, you know, other people that may be going through what I was going through at the time. And all I had was a journal. I didn't have, you know, I didn't really feel like I had anything else. I never turned to anything like alcohol or drugs or anything like that. You know, writing was kind of my therapy, and music. So I talk a lot about music. The book has quotes from songs at the beginning of each chapter. And I shared this on my Revolt TV interview as well, but Monica was a really big inspiration for me. She dropped her Still Standing album right after I tested positive.
Oh, man.
So when I listened to Still Standing, it was very, very motivational for me. You know, I needed that, you know.
I want to ask you this. For young people who've just found out that they may be HIV positive, how do you move forward with a social life and a dating life? And when you meet someone, do you tell them, hi, you have the dinner, you go out? And when do you disclose your status? When you feel it's getting serious, or kind of at the first dating, you know, when you first meet someone?
I think it's different strokes for different folks. You know, everybody's going to kind of navigate it and work through it in their own way. What works for me is to just be upfront at the beginning. I think it's easy to get caught up in feelings and things like that. And so sometimes it could just be too much for someone. So me personally, in my opinion, you know, I don't want it to be 6 months down the line and I'm like, oh, by the way, and then it's like, oh. You know, like, oh, no, I can't do that. That's too much for me. But you have to be okay with it yourself. You know what I mean? Like, you have to accept it on your own, you know, and understand that they're the ones that are missing out, not you. You know, I never let HIV define me. So, you know, at the end of the day, you can still, I think what we get away from is assuming or thinking that we have to live differently because we have HIV. Yeah, we have to be a little more cautious about certain things. Yeah, we may have to take a pill. I take one pill once a day.
Oh,
right now.
So it's not a whole bunch of pills?
No. It used to be.
Okay.
But it's not anymore. Even, you know, 13 years ago when I tested positive, I was taking 2 pills twice a day. And I'm down to 1 pill once a day.
Okay.
So, and they even have an injection now. Yeah. So where you can get it every other month.
See, there's so much advancements with HIV, and we haven't even really talked about AIDS and what's the difference between the two yet. But there's so many advancements. Do you think that there's going to be a cure for HIV/AIDS?
I hope so. I really do. You know, I think that we've come a long way, but I do still think we have a long way to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have read some stories on where they do the bone marrow transplant, and ironically, the person just doesn't have HIV anymore. So that is very promising.
Yeah.
For, you know, research and for all the people living with HIV. So what is the difference between HIV and AIDS?
So AIDS is like the last stage of HIV. That's the best way to explain it for people that don't live the HIV life. So HIV is the virus that causes AIDS. So HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, and then AIDS is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. So at that point, it's a matter of numbers. HIV is really a numbers. Your viral load and your CD4 count is what determines if they diagnose you with AIDS or not.
Okay. So most people just work to stay within just the HIV virus stage, so they never get to the actual AIDS stage.
Correct. By adhering to your medication, which if you're suffering from depression or, anxiety, PTSD, those kind of things from, however you contracted the virus or just from getting the virus in particular, sometimes it is people think it's just so simple to just get up and take a pill every day. It sounds really easy. But if you're not there mentally, if you're struggling, that is a challenge. It is a challenge to take care of yourself when you feel like you don't want to be here.
Oh, or maybe you feel, I feel healthy. I feel fine. I don't need to take this pill.
Exactly.
And it's just a constant reminder. I hear people saying that, okay, I have to take this pill. I can't skip it. It's just a constant reminder.
Yes. So, but if you want, to live a healthy lifestyle and, be able to have kids and things like that, like, you have to adhere to your medication.
I see. I hear lots of people always bring up Magic Johnson. Like, he don't have it anymore.
It's and Charlie Sheen, right? Nobody talks about that.
That's
right?
true.
So it's just like, you have to own it at the end of the day, and, people's like, oh, he got money, things like that. Honestly, if you take your medication every day, you can be undetectable.
Okay.
And live a perfectly healthy, normal life.
Right.
I don't think that you have to disclose at the very beginning of your conversation with someone. It's nobody's business if you're not, intimate.
It's just an associate.
Yeah. If you're not going to be intimate with them, then, So it's just, like I said, different strokes for different folks. Me, I find it easier to just let them know up front. It's a little more intimidating, I feel like, for me, because I'm very public about my status. I speak, and, it's hard for people to be in the light, with me having HIV. I talk about that in my book as well, about people being okay with being with me behind closed doors, but not wanting the public to know that they are with someone that has HIV. Yeah.
Ain't that something?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
I'm glad that you're bringing that up. And I do want to talk a little bit about, the Chris Howell Foundation, because that's why we're here.
Yes.
And how they focus on the HIV AIDS initiative. Of course, this is Youth HIV AIDS Awareness Day. How do you feel about organizations that make it their mission to continue to talk about HIV awareness and AIDS awareness?
I am so grateful for them. I don't feel like I had that at 22 when I tested, and maybe it was there and I just didn't know because it wasn't, broadcasted. It wasn't, didn't feel like it was as important as it is today. But the Chris Howell Foundation, yes, I'm grateful for organizations like his that allow us give us a platform, to share our stories and spread awareness for HIV and AIDS.
Okay, so before I let you go, some people are afraid of needles and they don't want to go to the doctor and get tested because, number one, they know they've been out in these streets doing bad. Let's just call a thing a thing. And then some people are afraid of the needles and the pokes and all those things to get tested. What advice would you give them to motivate them to just go and get tested and know your status and stop just living your life without knowing your status?
I have a YouTube channel, Life, Love, and HIV, and there is a video on there that shows me testing positive for HIV. I did not tell the tester that I knew I had HIV already.
Oh.
And I recorded it on National HIV Testing Day, which is June 27th, because I wanted to show people exactly what it was like. It's a little prick on your finger, and they just squeeze the blood into this little tube thing, and they drop it into a solution, and that's it. So I would encourage people to go out and check out that video, because that is a big stigma, right? That it takes a lot. It doesn't take a lot. They have OraQuick, which is at-home testing for HIV as well. So, swab, you know, I think it's a better results, you know, if you go and get your
the blood.
Yes. But if people are not comfortable with that, there are other options.
So our main takeaways are, if you are young, or even if you're not young, even if you're in a relationship, you should still go get tested and know your status before you're intimate with someone. Do you want to add anything to that?
And after.
Yes. Hold on. What do you mean by that?
Because you may not be positive, and then you may sleep with someone, and then you never know, right? So both of you, you know, you have to give yourself time. If you're having unprotected sex with, you know, anyone, you should know. You should continue to get tested, especially if you change partners. You know, I think it's important to don't just get tested once a year if you're with one person and you guys are not stepping out of your relationship, right? Then that might be a different conversation. But, you know, if you're having multiple partners and stuff like that, you should really get tested every time.
Oh, okay. So not even every 6 months, but every time you have unprotected sex with another partner.
And you don't know their status.
Okay.
You should always know the status of yourself.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And then if you know your status, you know, not only are you protecting yourself, you're protecting someone else.
Exactly.
So it kind of works both hand in hand.
It does.
Yeah. All right. So before we go, tell us a little bit one more time where they can get your book, Life, Love, and HIV, and anything else. If you have anything else coming up, maybe some speaking engagements or your YouTube channel, let us know where they can follow your journey.
Yeah. So Instagram, they can follow me, Life, Love, and HIV. The book is available on Amazon. And then I am speaking on a panel tomorrow at the University of Texas at Arlington for the U equals U symposium. So I'm pretty excited about that. So, you know, I take every opportunity that I get to share my story, because I think it's important for people to see themselves.
Absolutely.
And be able to have a support system. Yeah.
I think it's great. And what you're doing, I feel like you're saving a lot of lives just by speaking out, because there could be a young girl who's living her life recklessly, or a young male, and they're going to think twice about what they do. So I thank you so much for this conversation, and I hope you do great on your speaking engagement tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you all. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Again, this is on behalf of the Chris Howell Foundation. Thank you.